I'm pretty excited because with all the compost that I added about 3 weeks ago, the peppers are really taking off. This is a sweet banana pepper, and I wasn't sure how to tell if they're ready, but here they're blushing a purple color, so that tells me that I can go ahead and pick them. If you miss it and your banana peppers turn purple or red, that's okay. They're still going to be edible. They're still going to be sweet, so no worries. I'd show you how I snip the peppers off, but I can't for the life of me find scissors or my plant snips. It's nothing new there. So I grow all of our peppers here with our other flowers. So here are just perennial flowers from a wildflower seed mix, and some of them take up to 2 years to come out of the ground and start producing blossoms. So it's been an interesting journey watching things that we planted over a year and a half ago just kind of pop up over time. Here you can see where the flowers have kind of spindled out. They've already produced their seed and they're starting to die back. But at the same time, more of these flowers are popping up in their place. Next to it, we have our tomatillo plant. There's another one over there by the rosemary. This bed is really just a neglect bed. This is one of our muscadine grapevines here, where I just kind of let everything do its own thing. It does have some soaker hoses in it, so when I do need water, I just hook up the water hose. It makes it a lot easier. Here's all of our chocolate mint. Look how pretty it is with all of its flowers. There's that middle triangular bed. It's mostly herbs in there and some flowers. Here's another pepper of ours, but I'm not quite sure what it is, but I do see a flower on it, so before too much longer we'll be able to identify it. None of our peppers are spicy. I didn't plant spicy because I didn't want them to cross-pollinate with our sweet peppers, and I didn't want the kids to come out here and grab one. So until I can find a good way to keep them separated and teach the kids what to eat and what not to eat, I just don't think that I'm gonna grow spicy peppers. This is our California Wonder Pepper. It finally is getting blossoms. So you can see what I mean by the new growth due to the compost. All of this dark green is new within the last 3 weeks. So they went from severely dehydrated, not doing well at all, to all this new growth. And then you can see all this new growth right here too. Here's another pretty wild example of new growth. All this is new, and then this entire stem up here is new growth, and then there are several flowers. One's already spent, and then 2 up there. This is also a California Wonder Pepper. You can kind of see, here's our rose bush next to it. Here is bee balm, wild bergamot, which I've harvested about 2/3 of this. So this is all what's not been harvested. It'll spread back out and take over this entire area. And while we have a little bit of grass popping up, we don't really worry about it, especially when the bee balm and the other types of mint start to take over, because they really suppress weeds and protect the ground and hold in moisture. Here's another California Wonder, and all this is also new growth. So I definitely think that I'll be mulching and composting well in the future because it's made such a big difference. One of our days got to 112 degrees, so if that gives you any idea. Right now it's cooler because we've had rain for the first time in months the last week or two. Just a couple of days of rain, and this week several days of rain, and that's making a big difference too. Here we have our gypsy pepper, and I didn't know, I thought it was rotting, but it's blushing purple. So gypsy peppers do, but this is supposed to be significantly larger. But as you can see, this plant's very stunted too. I think on years where we get an adequate amount of rain, because some summers we are in a drought and some summers we're just doused in rain all summer long. These are starting to flower, but they're very stunted still. During those years, I think that planting peppers here will be okay, but other than that, this may not be the area for it because there's a lot of direct sunlight and it's too much when it's 112 degrees and then you have a raised bed, everything amplifies. So you're talking about 115 to 20 degrees in your raised beds. It's miserable. This is a volunteer sweet basil. I planted sweet basil and we had sweet basil until January or so, and then it finally got cold enough to kill it back. But growing basil 10 months out of the year is pretty impressive. Some more popping up. Now it's cooled down a little bit due to the rain. The basil's starting to thrive. During the heat of the summer, when it's just the sun's beating down on it all the time, it gets kind of tired. I find that growing them underneath things really makes a difference. There's our thyme. This plant's going on 2 years, which is pretty awesome. Here's some more gypsy peppers, but they're just now starting to kind of take off. I really think that getting some kind of shade cloth for the summer will be beneficial. There's one of those baby stink bug nymphs. Oh, it ran off before I could squash it. You can see some more volunteer tomatillos just kind of popping up. And finally, with all this rain, we have our first Gerber daisy of the season. They do not do well in the extreme heat. They do not seem to blossom at all when it gets too hot. But now it's cooled down a little bit. Looks like it's doing pretty well. So when I was cutting this bee balm back, I discovered a Gerber daisy, or orange Gerber daisy, under here, which I thought was dead. This bee balm just is relentless. I cut it way back to reveal that, and within just less than a month, it just takes over everything. This is why people are so adamant that if you're growing a mint plant, keep it inside of a raised bed, because they really do just take over. Here's our triangle garden. This is my oldest son's garden. You can see he planted all of this himself. He maintains it mostly by himself. I do come out and harvest sometimes because it just gets away from him. But you can see all of these have been harvested recently, and there's still quite a bit left after harvesting. And I harvested about 2/3 of the plants. And then this I cut all the tops way back because there's flowering, but with our hot climate, it's still flowering. It did bush out because I heard that if you cut it back, it will bush out some. So you can see all of this is the new growth from where it did bush out. So let's see, this is organic sweet Genovese basil. It's still so pretty though. And look at this. We've never grown this until this year. It's variegated lemon thyme. It looks so surreal in the camera when I take pictures of it. It just doesn't seem like a real plant. It's really pretty. And here's our marjoram here. Look how pretty that is. You can see right here we still have carrots popping up. Those carrots are over a year old right now, and they're still kind of growing. They're growing slow because it's the heat of the summer. Those are the ones that just didn't do well over the winter. If you watched our previous videos or follow us on Instagram, then you've probably seen where we harvested thousands and thousands of carrots out of this bed. We just sprinkled the seeds right on top of the soil, watered it in and harvested them. But there were a lot that just weren't ready too, and that's where this comes in. There's about 150 carrots that weren't ready, and they're not growing very well because it is the heat of the summer. So we're just letting them be. And then because the quality is really low, when we do pick them, we'll probably throw them in for the ducks and the chickens. This is still one of my favorite plants. It's a spicy Italian oregano. I love the flower clusters. Aren't those cool? Honestly, this plant has a very similar taste, in my opinion, to the bee balm. So I definitely could see where they could be used interchangeably, except for the bee balm. One leaf equals a whole stem of this oregano. It is very spicy, and I find the more we go through a drought, the hotter they get. Kind of like peppers. The less you water them, the hotter and spicier they tend to get. How amazing is this fennel? So until I started growing Florence fennel, I didn't know it would produce more than one bulb. And these bulbs have been growing for almost 2 years now. And I've harvested. Now, they're not good to harvest right now because they are flowering. But this is the third time this plant's flowered. And it flowered last fall. It flowered early this spring. It's flowering again now. But it still produces bulbs after the flowering is done. And then all of these little pieces down here will fatten up and form into individual bulbs. So instead of getting one big bulb, I've gotten 6 or 7 big bulbs and several small medium bulbs. And then the entire plant's edible. So you can eat the seeds, you can eat the flowers, you can eat all of these. I like to cut them up and dehydrate them, grind them up for tea. The flowers are great for tea. They're really good cut up and cooked in sugar syrup, similar to licorice, because Florence fennel tastes so much like licorice. And the bulb, I found when it's cooked in water and then dehydrated, it does not taste like licorice. It has a very mild flavor. I can't even begin to describe it. So I really like that, using it in stews, because it's a great thing to store after it's dehydrated. But it doesn't have that overbearing licorice taste. And my family isn't a fan of licorice. So raw, you're going to get a licorice taste. Cooked, not so much. These stems tend to have a stronger licorice taste, which is why I like cooking them for about 5 minutes. In a rapid boil in sugar syrup. That makes them a little softer, and then you can dehydrate them easily, because if you try to dehydrate them without boiling them, they're going to be really hard. But it kind of bursts the cell walls to dehydrate them, or to boil them, and then the sugar gets in there, so you're getting a nice licorice flavor with the sugar or whatever sweetener you choose to use. It's just a nice little healthy candy that you can make with very few ingredients.